Is there any pain greater than losing the one you love most? Your own child? Your son? But what if I told you that wasn't the end of it? At my son's funeral, in that suffocating Oregon church, my phone burned with a text that ripped my heart to shreds. Mom, I'm alive. Don't trust Laura. Rage and agony consumed me, my boy. Betrayed. And I'd been a fool. Subscribe now and tell me where you're watching, because this betrayal will haunt you. I'm Eleanor Thompson, 68 years old, a retired elementary school teacher from Willow Creek, Oregon, a sleepy town where everyone knows your name and your business. For 40 years, I poured my heart into raising my son James alone, after his father left us when he was just 5. We were at team Sunday dinners at my little ranch-style home, his laughter filling the rooms, his dreams my pride. I thought I knew my boy. Thought I'd built a life where trust was unshakable. But then he married Laura 3 years ago, and everything changed. Her charm was a mask. Her smile, a calculated weapon. She'd wedge herself between James and me, canceling our plans with excuses that stung like betrayal. "Oh, Eleanor, James is just so busy," she'd say, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I swallowed my doubts, clung to the hope that she made him happy. 2 weeks ago, James called, his voice electric with excitement. "Mom, Laura found this incredible deal, a mining investment in Montana. It's big, life-changing money," I warned him, my gut twisting. "Be careful, sweetheart. Those deals can be traps." He laughed it off. "Laura's got it all figured out, Mom. She's brilliant." But something in his tone felt forced, like he was convincing himself. Then came Laura's call, her voice a rehearsed wail. "James is gone, Eleanor. A car crash. He's burned beyond recognition." My world shattered, and now, standing at his funeral, that text, "Mom, I'm alive. Don't trust Laura," ignited a fury in me. I had to know the truth. Laura's voice on that call still claws at my soul. "Eleanor, it's James," she'd sobbed, her words a jagged knife. "A car crash on Route 26. The fire, it burned him beyond recognition." I stood frozen in my Willow Creek kitchen, the phone trembling in my hand, as she painted a nightmare. My son, my James, reduced to ashes in a twisted wreck. "I'll handle the funeral," she insisted, her voice cracking just enough to sound real. "You shouldn't see him like this. It's too much." I wanted to scream, to demand to see my boy, but grief choked me silent. Laura's words felt too polished, too perfect, like lines from a script she'd rehearsed in front of a mirror. I'd buried my husband 20 years ago, felt the raw ache of loss. But this was different. Her sorrow rang hollow, a performance that didn't reach her eyes. Yet, I let her take charge, my heart too shattered to argue, agreeing to a closed-casket funeral at Willow Creek Community Church. The day of the funeral, I stood in my black dress, numb, as neighbors whispered condolences and laid flowers on a mahogany coffin that hid. What? Nothing felt right. Laura, draped in a designer veil, clutched my arm, her tears falling on cue. "Eleanor, we'll get through this," she murmured, but her grip was cold, possessive, like she was staking a claim. I nodded, my throat tight, forcing a smile for the mourner's old students, church friends, the librarian who'd known James since he was a boy. But inside, rage simmered. How dare she play the grieving widow when something about this felt so wrong? Then, at 11:07 a.m., as the organ played a mournful hymn, my phone vibrated in my purse. I slipped it out, expecting another condolence text. Instead, the screen glowed with words that tore my world apart. "Mom, I'm alive. Don't trust Laura." My breath caught, my knees buckled, and I gripped the pew to keep from collapsing. "James? Alive?" The words burned into me, each letter a spark of hope laced with fury. Who sent this? Was it a cruel prank? Or was my son out there hiding from whatever Laura had woven around him? I glanced at Laura, her face a mask of sorrow as she accepted a tissue from a mourner. My blood boiled. She was a liar, a snake in my son's life, and I'd been blind to it. But I couldn't confront her. Not here, not yet. If James was alive, he was in danger, and I had to play this smart. I slipped out to the church's quiet hallway, my hands shaking as I typed back. James, where are you? What's happening? The reply came instantly. Can't talk now. Meet me at the old Grayson warehouse, 10 miles out on River Road. 8 p.m. tonight. Come alone. Don't trust Laura. My heart pounded like a drum, each beat a mix of relief and dread. The Grayson warehouse, an abandoned relic from Willow Creek's logging days, overgrown with weeds and secrets. James used to sneak there as a teenager to meet friends, thinking I didn't know. Who else would mention that place? It had to be him. I returned to the funeral, forcing myself to stand beside Laura, her crocodile tears now an insult to every moment I'd grieved. Eleanor, you're so strong, she whispered, squeezing my hand. I wanted to wrench it away, to scream, "What have you done to my son?" But I swallowed the rage, nodding meekly. If James was hiding, there was a reason, a dangerous one. Confronting Laura now could unravel everything, could put him at risk. I played the part of the broken mother, accepting hugs, murmuring thanks, while my mind raced. What had Laura dragged James into? Was she capable of faking his death? And who was watching us, as that text warned? Every glance from a mourner felt like a threat, every shadow a spy. As the service ended, Laura leaned close, her breath hot against my ear. We need to talk about James's estate soon, Eleanor. It's what he would have wanted. Her words dripped with greed, and I saw her for what she was, a predator circling my family's legacy. I drove home, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, the 10-mile trip to the warehouse looming. Tonight, I'd find James and uncover the truth Laura was hiding. The sun had dipped below the Oregon hills, casting long shadows over Willow Creek as I gripped the wheel of my old Ford Taurus, driving the 10 miles to the Grayson warehouse. My heart thundered, each beat a mix of fury and desperate hope. That text, "Mom, I'm alive. Don't trust Laura," had shattered the grief I'd carried since Laura's call about James's supposed death in a fiery crash. Now, every mile down River Road felt like a step into a nightmare I couldn't wake from. The warehouse, a crumbling relic from the town's logging days, loomed ahead, its rusted metal walls choked with ivy. I parked behind a cluster of pine trees, half a mile out, my breath shallow as I scanned the darkness for any sign of danger. Was this a trap? Was James really waiting, or had Laura set this up to bury her lies deeper? I pushed the thought aside. My boy needed me, and no one, not Laura, not her schemes, would stop me from finding him. I stepped out, the cold evening air biting my skin, and crept toward the warehouse, my sneakers crunching on gravel. The place was desolate, the only sound the distant hoot of an owl and the faint hum of crickets. My phone buzzed again, and I froze, checking the screen. Another text from the unknown number. Inside back door. Hurry. My pulse raced, anger surging at the thought of Laura's betrayal orchestrating this secrecy. I slipped through the splintered back door, the musty smell of decay hitting me as my eyes adjusted to the dim light filtering through broken windows. Shadows danced across the concrete floor. And then I saw him, a figure in the corner, hunched, nervous. James? I whispered, my voice cracking with a mix of relief and rage. He stepped into a sliver of moonlight, and my heart clenched. It was my son, alive, his familiar broad shoulders and tousled brown hair unmistakable. But his face was haggard, eyes haunted, like he'd aged a decade in weeks. "Mom," he rasped, pulling me into a fierce hug. His warmth, his heartbeat against mine, confirmed what that text had promised. He was alive. Tears burned my eyes, but fury quickly overtook them. "What the hell is going on, James?" I demanded, pulling back to search his face. "Why fake your death? Why let me think you were gone?" My voice shook, the pain of those days in mourning slicing through me like a blade. I'm so sorry, Mom, James said, his voice low, urgent. I had no choice. Laura's not who she seems. She's working with people, dangerous people, who want something we didn't even know we had. He glanced over his shoulder, as if expecting someone to burst through the walls. Remember Grandpa's old land in Montana? That worthless plot you've paid taxes on for years? I nodded, confused. My father had left me 50 acres of rocky, useless land near Bozeman, a burden I'd never bothered to visit. Laura had it surveyed behind my back. James continued, his voice tight with anger. There's a rare mineral deposit underneath worth millions, maybe tens of millions. She's been planning to steal it from us since the day we met. My stomach churned, Laura's fake tears at the funeral flashing in my mind. That scheming viper had played us both, and I'd welcomed her into our family. How did this happen? I asked, my fists clenching. How did you get tangled in this? James ran a hand through his hair, pacing the dusty floor. It started with her investment pitch. She said she'd found a way to turn that land into a gold mine, private loans, quick returns. I trusted her, Mom. I signed papers, borrowed money, big money, from the wrong people. Then I overheard her on the phone planning my accident. She was arranging my funeral before I was even dead. His voice broke, and I saw the boy I'd raised, scared and betrayed, hiding in the man before me. They wanted me gone so Laura could claim the land, he said. If I was dead, she'd inherit everything as my wife. I had to disappear to protect you. If they knew I was alive, they'd come after you to flush me out. My rage flared hotter, not just at Laura but at myself for ignoring the red flags, her controlling nature, her insistence on handling the funeral. Who are these people? I asked, my voice sharp. Criminals, Mom, James said, his eyes darting to the door. Loan sharks, maybe worse. Laura's not just a gold digger, she's in deep with them. They've done this before, targeting families with hidden assets. I grabbed his arm, my teacher's instinct kicking in. The same resolve I'd used to face down bullies for 40 years. You're not facing this alone, James. We'll stop her. He shook his head, fear etched in his features. Mom, they're watching. If Laura suspects anything, they'll kill us both. The weight of his words settled like a stone in my chest, but I straightened, my anger a shield. Let them try, I said, my voice cold. They don't know who they're dealing with. I hugged him again, the feel of his heartbeat grounding me. Stay hidden. I'll handle Laura. As I slipped back into the night, the warehouse fading behind me, I knew the truth was only the beginning. Laura's web of lies was unraveling, and I'd make sure she paid for every tear I'd shed. The darkness of the Grayson warehouse clung to me as I stood there, my son James alive but broken before me, his words slicing deeper than any knife. Laura planned it all, Mom, he said, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and shame. Our marriage, her love, it was all a lie to get that Montana land. My heart shattered, not just for James, but for every moment I'd let Laura into our lives, believing her smiles, her promises. I'd been a fool, a 8-year-old widow who thought she could trust her son's wife. The pain was a living thing, clawing at my chest, a raw, unbearable ache that made me want to scream until my lungs gave out. How could I have been so blind? How could I have let this predator sink her claws into my boy? I sank onto a dusty crate, the cold concrete floor of the warehouse mirroring the chill in my bones. Tell me everything, I demanded, my voice sharp with fury, though tears burned my eyes. James paced, his shadow flickering in the dim light. It wasn't just the land, Mom. Laura's been playing me from the start. That first date, when she laughed at my stories about fishing with you at Willow Creek Lake, she already knew about Grandpa's property. She researched our family, found out about the 50 acres in Montana, and saw dollar signs. His fists clenched. She made me believe she loved me. Every I love you, every plan we made, it was all to get me to sign those papers, to borrow from those criminals. My mind reeled, flashing back to the moments I'd tried to love Laura. The Christmas I'd knitted her a scarf, the way she'd hugged me, her eyes warm with fake gratitude. "Oh, Eleanor, you're so thoughtful," she'd said, and I'd beamed, thinking I was building a family. Now, those memories twisted into poison. I remembered the day I gave them a $20,000 check for the down payment on their cozy two-bedroom house in Willow Creek, believing I was helping James start a new life. Laura had squeezed my hand, promising, "We'll make you proud, Eleanor." Proud? She'd been laughing at me, plotting to steal everything I'd worked for, everything my father left behind. The betrayal cut so deep it felt like my heart was bleeding out, each pulse a reminder of my failure to protect my son. "How could you not see it, James?" I asked, my voice cracking, anger and pain warring inside me. "I raised you to be smarter than this." He flinched, his eyes dropping to the floor. "I know, Mom. I trusted her. She made it so easy, her plans, her numbers, they all added up. At first, the investments paid off. We made thousands in weeks. I thought we were set for life." He stopped, his voice breaking. Then I heard her on the phone, talking about how they'd handle me. She said, "Once he's gone, the land's ours." I realized she wasn't just cheating me, she was ready to let me die. I stood, my legs trembling, rage drowning out the grief. Laura hadn't just betrayed James. She'd betrayed me, my trust, my family. Every tear I'd shed at that fake funeral, every sleepless night I'd spent mourning, was her doing. I wanted to march back to Willow Creek, drag her from that house, and demand answers. But James grabbed my arm, his grip desperate. "Mom, you can't confront her. These people she's with, they're not just crooks. They've killed before. They've targeted other families, older folks with land or money they don't even know is valuable. If they think you're onto them, they'll come for you." His words hit like a punch, but they also lit a fire in me. I'd spent 40 years teaching kids in Willow Creek, facing down tantrums and defiance with calm resolve. Laura and her goons thought they could scare me, thought I was just a frail old woman. They were wrong. "They don't get to win, James," I said, my voice low, seething. "I've lost too much to let them take you too." He looked at me, hope flickering in his tired eyes. "What do we do?" he asked. I straightened, my teacher's backbone stiffening. "We fight back, but we do it smart." As I left the warehouse, the pain of Laura's betrayal fueled my resolve. I'd make her regret ever crossing a Thompson. The pain of Laura's betrayal burned like a wildfire in my chest, but as I drove away from the Grayson warehouse, my fury hardened into something sharper resolve. James was alive, hiding in the shadows of Willow Creek, Oregon, and I'd be damned if Laura and her criminal allies stole him from me again. At 68, I'd spent 4 decades teaching kids to face their fears, and now it was my turn. Laura thought she could play me, thought I was just a grieving old woman who'd sign away her family's legacy. She was about to learn how wrong she was. I needed a plan, one that would expose her lies and protect James, and I knew exactly who could help. Henry Larson, my old student turned lawyer, was my ace in the hole. If anyone could outsmart Laura's schemes, it was him. I pulled into the parking lot of Larson and Associates, a sleek law office 15 miles away in Salem, the morning after meeting James. My hands still shook from the rage and grief of learning Laura had orchestrated a fake marriage, a fake death, all to seize a Montana mineral deposit worth millions. Henry greeted me at the door, his gray hair and warm smile, a stark contrast to the rebellious teen I'd once caught sneaking cigarettes behind my classroom. "Mrs. Thompson, you haven't aged a day," he said, ushering me into his office. "Don't sweet-talk me, Henry," I snapped, my voice tight with urgency. "My son's alive, and his wife's trying to destroy us. I need you to build a trap she can't escape." Henry's eyes widened as I laid out the nightmare. Laura's call about James's supposed death in a car crash, the closed casket funeral, the text that proved he was alive, and his revelation about the Montana land. "She's working with criminals, Henry," I said, slamming my fist on his desk. They've targeted families like ours before, preying on seniors who don't know their property's worth a fortune. Henry leaned back, stroking his chin. This is fraud, extortion, maybe conspiracy to commit murder. You're talking serious felonies. I nodded, my jaw tight. I want them to pay, but I need James safe. Can you create documents that look like they give Laura what she wants but actually bury her? Henry grinned. The same mischievous glint I remembered from when he'd aced my toughest exams. Oh, I can do better than that. We'll draft papers that make her think she's getting the land, but signing them will be like signing a confession. For the next 3 hours, we worked like a war council. Henry crafted a set of legal documents transferring the Montana property to a trust with Laura as trustee, but buried in the fine print were clauses that would force her to disclose any prior fraudulent activities to federal authorities. If she signs, she's admitting to everything, Henry explained, handing me the papers. If she doesn't, she gets nothing. Either way, she's trapped. I left his office with a briefcase full of legal dynamite, but my plan needed more. I needed evidence of Laura's deceit to seal her fate. That evening, I drove to the house I'd helped James and Laura buy, a charming 2-bedroom in Willow Creek, now a den of lies. Laura answered the door, her eyes red-rimmed, still playing the grieving widow. "Eleanor, I'm so glad you came," she said, her voice syrupy with false warmth. "We need to sort out James's affairs." I forced a nod, my stomach churning at her act. She led me to the dining room, where a stack of documents waited, forged papers to transfer the Montana land to her name. "These are for the estate," she said, sliding them toward me. James would have wanted this. I pretended to study them, my heart pounding with rage. "This is a lot to take in, Laura," I said, channeling the confused widow she expected. As she turned to grab a glass of water, I slipped my phone from my purse and snapped photos of the documents, each one a piece of her treachery. "Oh, clumsy me," I said, knocking over my water glass, soaking the papers. Laura rushed to grab towels, and I pocketed my phone, my pulse racing with triumph. "I'm so sorry," I lied, dabbing at the mess. "Maybe we should do this another day?" Laura's smile was tight, her frustration barely hidden. "No, I have copies. Let's finish this soon for James." Her words were a blade, but I smiled back, knowing I had what I needed. As I drove home, the photos on my phone felt like a loaded gun. Laura thought she was in control, but I was done being her pawn. With Henry's documents and this evidence, I was ready to turn her game against her. But I knew the next step would be dangerous. Laura's allies weren't just crooks, they were killers. I had to be smarter, sharper, and one step ahead. Tomorrow I'd face her again, and this time, I'd make sure she walked right into my trap. The weight of Laura's betrayal and the evidence in my phone photos of her forged documents fueled my every step as I drove to her house in Willow Creek, Oregon the next evening. My heart pounded like a war drum, but I'd spent 40 years as an elementary school teacher, outsmarting chaos in classrooms. Laura and her criminal allies thought they could bully a 6-8-year-old widow into submission, but they were about to face Eleanor Thompson, a mother who'd do anything to protect her son, James. Henry Larson's legal trap, a briefcase full of documents that would turn Laura's greed against her, sat on the passenger seat. Each page was a landmine, designed to make her confess her crimes the moment she signed. But tonight, I needed to play my part perfectly, grieving, confused, compliant, while setting the stage for her downfall. Laura opened the door of the 2-bedroom house I'd helped them buy, her face a mask of false sympathy. "Eleanor, thank you for coming," she said, her voice smooth as venom. "This is so hard, but we need to finalize James's estate." Her eyes flickered with something predatory, and my stomach churned with rage. How dare she stand there, pretending to mourn my son, when she'd orchestrated his fake death to steal a Montana mineral deposit worth millions. I forced a trembling smile, clutching my purse to hide my shaking hands. "Of course, Laura," I said softly, stepping into the dimly lit dining room where a new stack of papers waited, their edges crisp with deceit. As I sat, my eyes scanned the room family photos on the wall. James's fishing rod in the corner, relics of a life Laura had poisoned. She slid the documents toward me, her manicured nails glinting under the chandelier. "These transfer the Montana land to settle James's debts," she said, her tone too calm, too practiced. "It's what he would have wanted." I nodded, feigning hesitation, my fingers brushing the papers as if overwhelmed. "It's a lot to process," I murmured, buying time. Then, the air shifted. A heavy tread sounded from the hallway, and a man stepped into the light tall, broad-shouldered, with a face like carved stone and eyes that chilled my blood. "Eleanor, this is Marcus," Laura said, her voice tightening. "He worked with James on the investments." My heart lurched. Marcus wasn't just a business partner. He was one of them, the criminals James had warned me about, the ones who'd kill to secure their millions. "Nice to meet you," I said, my voice steady despite the fear clawing my insides. Marcus didn't sit. He leaned against the wall, his hand resting on something beneath his jacket, a bulge that screamed danger. "Let's make this quick, Mrs. Thompson," he said, his voice low, menacing. "Sign the papers, and we all move on." The threat hung heavy, and Laura's eyes darted to him, a flash of unease betraying her composure. My pulse raced, but I channeled every ounce of my teacher's calm, the kind that tamed wild classrooms. "I just want to do right by James," I said, my voice quivering just enough to sell the act. Then, Marcus stepped closer, and my breath caught as he pulled a small pistol from his jacket, resting it casually on the table. "No games, Eleanor," he said, his tone ice-cold. "Sign now, or this gets messy." The room seemed to shrink, the air thick with danger. Laura's face paled, but she didn't stop him, her silence confirming her complicity. My mind screamed James was right. These people were killers. But I'd faced down bullies before, and I wasn't about to break. I need to read them first," I stammered, reaching for the papers, my hand brushing my purse where Henry's documents waited. "James always said to be careful with legal stuff." Marcus's eyes narrowed, but Laura jumped in, her voice sharp. "Eleanor, we don't have time for this. The debts need to be cleared tonight, or James's memory gets dragged through the mud." Her words were a slap, twisting my son's name to manipulate me. Rage surged, but I swallowed it, pretending to fumble with the papers. "I'm just so overwhelmed," I said, my voice breaking as I slid Henry's documents from my purse, placing them beside hers. "Maybe these will help?" My lawyer drew them up to protect the family. Laura's brow furrowed, but Marcus grabbed the papers, scanning them with a scowl. "What's this?" he demanded. I forced a shaky smile. "Just standard estate forms. To make sure everything's legal." My heart pounded as he read, unaware he was holding his own confession. I needed to stall, to get them to the diner where Sheriff Diane Brooks could act. "Can we finish this at the Riverside Diner?" I asked, my voice pleading. "It's public, and I need to feel safe." Laura hesitated, but Marcus nodded, tucking the gun away. "Fine, but no tricks." As I gathered my purse, my eyes locked on Laura's. And for a moment, I saw her fear. She knew I wasn't as weak as she thought. The diner would be her undoing, and I was ready to spring the trap. The Riverside Diner glowed like a beacon, in the heart of Willow Creek, Oregon, its neon sign casting a warm light across the parking lot. As I stepped inside, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and fury. The briefcase in my hand held Henry Larson's legal trap documents that would make Laura and her criminal ally Marcus confess their crimes with every signature. After facing Marcus's gun at Laura's house, I'd convinced them to meet here, a public place where Sheriff Diane Brooks could be ready to pounce. The diner was alive with the clatter of plates and the hum of small-town gossip, familiar faces from Willow Creek's church and library filling the booths. I spotted Sheriff Brooks at her usual table, her eyes sharp behind a cup of coffee, pretending to read a report. My rage at Laura's betrayal fueled me, but I had to play the grieving mother one last time to spring this trap. I slid into a corner booth, the vinyl creaking under me, and Laura and Marcus arrived moments later, their faces tight with impatience. Laura's designer scarf couldn't hide the greed in her eyes, and Marcus's hulking presence made every nerve in my body scream danger. "Let's get this over with, Eleanor," Laura said. Her voice clipped, dropping the grieving widow act. She set her forged documents on the table, the ones meant to steal my Montana land, worth millions for its mineral deposits. I pushed them aside, my hands steady, despite the adrenaline surging through me. "I had my lawyer prepare something better," I said, sliding Henry's papers toward them. "These ensure everything's legal and protect James's legacy." My voice wavered just enough to seem frail, but inside, I was a coiled spring, ready to strike. Marcus's eyes narrowed, scanning the documents with a predator's focus. "What's with all the extra clauses?" he asked, his tone sharp. I forced a shaky smile, channeling the confused 6-8-year-old they expected. "Oh, just standard stuff, Marcus. My lawyer, Henry Larson, said it's to avoid tax issues and keep things clean." Laura flipped through the pages, her fingers twitching with eagerness. "This looks complicated," she said, a hint of suspicion creeping into her voice. I leaned forward, my tone soft but deliberate. "It's just to make sure there's no fraud or liens tied to the land. You know, after James's investments." I let my voice catch, as if overcome by grief, but my eyes locked on Laura's, daring her to flinch. Sheriff Brooks shifted in her seat across the diner, her glance meeting mine for a split second. I'd called her that afternoon, sharing Henry's plan and the photos of Laura's forged documents. She was ready, her deputies positioned outside, waiting for my signal. Marcus hesitated, his hand brushing the jacket where his gun hid, but the diner's bustle, waitresses pouring coffee, locals laughing, kept him in check. "We don't have all night," he growled. "Sign these and we're done." I nodded, pretending to fumble with a pen. "I just want to be sure," I said, stalling. "Laura, you said this was for James, right? To honor him?" Her face tightened, but she forced a smile. "Of course, Eleanor. It's what he wanted." The lie burned, and I wanted to scream, to expose her right there, but I held back. Instead, I pushed Henry's documents closer. "Then let's use these. They're safer." Laura and Marcus exchanged a glance, and for a moment, I thought they'd bolt. But greed won out. Laura grabbed a pen, signing her name with a flourish, oblivious to the legal noose tightening around her. Marcus followed, his scrawl heavy on the page. I felt a surge of triumph, like the moment I'd watched a stubborn student finally grasp a lesson. Those signatures were their confessions, admitting to fraud, extortion, and conspiracy, all woven into Henry's brilliant trap. As Laura handed me the signed papers, I stood, my voice trembling with feigned emotion. "I need a moment in the restroom," I said, clutching my purse. Marcus's eyes followed me, but I walked calmly, my heart racing. I slipped past the counter and approached Sheriff Brooks's table. "Diane," I whispered, sliding her the photos and a note with the warehouse address James had given me. "They signed. It's done." She nodded, her face hard with resolve. "Stay clear, Eleanor. We've got this." I returned to the booth, my face a mask of sorrow, but inside I was roaring. Laura and Marcus thought they'd won, but they were about to face justice. As I sat back down, Laura's phone buzzed, and her eyes darted to Marcus. "We need to get these to the others," she said, standing. I knew they meant their criminal partners, waiting at a warehouse 5 miles away. I smiled sadly, playing my part. "I just want this to be over," I said, knowing Sheriff Brooks was already mobilizing her team. The trap was sprung, and Laura's world was about to collapse. The night air in Willow Creek, Oregon, felt lighter as I drove home from the Riverside Diner, the weight of Laura's betrayal finally lifting. Sheriff Diane Brooks had just called, her voice steady with triumph. "Eleanor, we got them. Laura, Marcus, and their partners are in custody, facing federal charges for fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. My heart, battered by grief and rage, swelled with a quiet victory. James was safe, hidden at a friend's cabin 20 miles outside town, and the Montana land my father's legacy was secure. At 68, I'd face down criminals who thought they could break a retired teacher. They'd underestimated me, and that was their fatal mistake. I pulled into my driveway, the familiar porch light casting a warm glow. James waited there, his silhouette a miracle I'd never take for granted again. We hugged, his arms tight around me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt whole. "It's really over, Mom?" he asked, his voice soft, like the boy who'd once run to me after a scraped knee. "It's over, sweetheart," I said, my eyes wet. "You're home." Over coffee in my kitchen, I saw a man changed not just by Laura's lies, but by the courage it took to fake his death and trust me to fight for him. I'd learned something too. Age doesn't dim your strength, it sharpens it. For 40 years I'd shaped young minds, but that night I discovered a fire in me I never knew existed. Laura's scheme to steal millions had unraveled because I refused to be a victim. The lesson hit me hard. Trust your instincts, especially when the world calls you weak. At 68, I was no fragile widow, I was a mother who'd outsmarted killers. You're never too old to fight for what matters, to protect those you love, or to rewrite your story. So, please, if this moved you, hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to The Unwanted Revenge. Share your story because your strength, your voice, matters.